We've got Homer Flynn here with us from the Cryptic Corporation. Homer has been on the channel a few times before, and the Residents have an incredible new album out. It's called Dr. Dark. This album, Homer, this album's incredible. I've listened to it 3, 4 times. I think it came out last week, and it's unbelievable. The Residents have done an amazing job. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, thanks. It's nice to hear. Now, we had a listening event for a lot of the principals that were involved in it in a very nice recording studio about a week ago. And I hadn't listened to it for a while myself. And it was nice to hear it all fresh in a fantastic system. And yeah, I thought it sounded great.
It sounds amazing. The orchestral instrument recordings and the mix, the mastering sounds fantastic. I hate to go superlative on this, but this is probably my favorite Residence album since Animal Lover.
Wow.
I just think it's an amazing musical, dramatic work of art. Just congratulations to the band.
I will pass that on. I credit a lot to Edwin Outwater. He's the music director for the San Francisco Conservatory. He's a classical conductor, and he's a big Residence fan. And when he came here to take this job about 4 or 5 years ago, one of his big priorities was to do a collaboration with the Residents. So there it is.
Well, and Eric Drew Feldman was a big part of this one too, right?
Yeah, well, Eric is the Residence producer now, so I would say he and Edwin are the two primary collaborators with the Residents on this.
Now, I have to say another thing. I spent some time watching the story that inspired this album with James Vance. Uh, it was some of the most disturbing and dark. It looked like James Vance's face looked like something you would have drawn, you or your wife would have drawn. Just like terrifying.
And I talked to Ray like a dead person. I don't expect an answer.
Why don't you tell us the story, that inspired this album?
Well, in 1985, two teenagers, James Vance and Ray Belknap, were in Reno, Nevada. They were drinking way too much beer or whatever, too much drugs and too much heavy metal music. They grabbed a shotgun, went out into a schoolyard next door to one of them, and bam, bam. And so their parents, taking no responsibility whatsoever, then sued Judas Priest and Warner Brothers Records for having created these hypnotic backwards messages in the music that then compel their sons to commit suicide. And really, the event, I don't think got that much attention. It was the trial that got the attention. And then the trial, I think, happened in 1992. And this documentary filmmaker from New York named David Van Taylor came to document the trial. And what should he discover at that point, but that one of them had completely succeeded and committed suicide. The other had only partially succeeded and blew off a massive part of his face. And so David Van Taylor, the filmmaker, actually did interviews with James Vance, and they are the train wreck that you cannot take your eyes off of. And the film is available on YouTube at this point. It's called Dream Deceivers. So if you want to have your mind blown, not necessarily in a fun way, go to YouTube and check out Dream Deceivers.
Yeah, it was. I watched the first 15 minutes of the documentary, and honestly, I was getting grossed out. I had to turn it off. It was so Dark. I know it's kind of cliche to say that, but watching it, I just felt, oh my goodness, these people are so twisted. And then reading about the parents, the abusive
Yeah,
parents who basically are just blaming music for this to happen.
right, exactly. Yeah.
So this CD is it's very surprising also. Not only is it highly orchestrated with symphonic instruments, but I don't know if this is a new area for the Residents, given Nolan Cook and his guitar style, but there's some pretty heavy moments, like heavy metal moments on this album. And I feel like it's new in a way for the Residents. Maybe not aesthetically new, but from a genre perspective, right from the beginning, I thought, is this a heavy metal album? Like, where is this going to go? I'd love to hear your response to that.
Well, the residents love to play around with musical forms, and heavy metal is nothing that they've ever particularly uh, worked with in the past. But given the story in this, and the two teenagers listening to too much heavy metal music, blah blah, they just felt like, well, yes, it has to be. And then the album takes place really. It's really written as a modern opera, and it's in three acts. Act one is, the two teenagers, are raising hell, getting the gun, bam, bam. Act two introduces uh, Dr. Dark as a character. Dr. Dark is based on Dr. Kevorkian. And then Act three, so we bring the survivor and Dr. Dark together, and it moves towards, what you almost have to see as an inevitable conclusion. The residents felt like the challenge was how to keep it interesting when it was obvious what the conclusion was going to be. And I think they did a good job of that.
I'm curious because the album really gets into a lot of spiritual stuff too. Can you kind of elucidate where the Residents are? Is this just storytelling, or is this riding a line? Is it a political commentary? What is going on? There's a lot about Jesus and prayer and spirituality, and it's different than I've heard in, let's say, God in Three Persons, which seems much more sarcastic.
Um, It's really storytelling. I mean, the residents, I suppose they won't mind me saying this, all come from Protestant backgrounds. None of them are churchgoers at this point, but they feel that Christianity, and particularly Protestant Christianity, formed a lot of their values as young people. And, you can turn your back on that, but it still stays with you. And I feel like it has stayed with the residents very strongly. Um, I don't know that they are especially making any statements with it. I mean, they're certainly not supportive of the way a lot of I don't know, right-wing born-again Christians are trying to take the politics of our country. One of the things that our country was based on is separation of church and state, and the residents certainly believe that, and there are a lot of people now who apparently don't, which honestly I see as kind of too bad. Um, but once again, it's like I don't know that they're making any statements. They did an album in '99, Wormwood, that where they were revisiting the Bible, and they found it incredibly fascinating. They hadn't really paid any attention to it probably for the most part since they were teenagers or in their early 20s, and so to go back, in their I don't know 50s, I guess, something like that, and try to look at it from a more objective point of view. Uh, I mean, they kind of wanted to compare it to Eskimo in a way, in that they
Mm.
felt like it was this kind of weird picture of a culture that, they couldn't really relate to, that, but was kind of fascinating at the same time.
So there's I had read somewhere, maybe it was because of the trial. I think there was it in 1986 or something? When was the trial?
The
The Vance
James,
trial?
well, yeah, 92, I think.
Oh, okay, 92. And the residents had talked about maybe doing a project about this story back then in the early 90s. Was this just in the backlog for 30 some years, or, did the political scene motivate, bringing this story to the surface here in 2025?
Well, one of the residents saw the movie when it came out and was just, mind was blown. I mean, just really fascinated by it. He felt like this is a residence thing. We've got to do something with this. And the others found it interesting, and compelling in a lot of ways, but they felt like just telling the story of that wasn't enough. It needed something more. It needed a twist. It needed to have something added to it. And it wasn't until, I don't know, several years ago that the idea came up of introducing Dr. Kevorkian like character. And that's really when it all came together for them.
So this is some pretty sophisticated uh, music in addition to the storytelling. I feel like an album like Tweedles is so much more emphasizing the storytelling than the music, but I feel like Dr. Dark is perhaps a return to much more music, that accompanies storytelling. Is this like I don't know, is this a shift in the residents' direction for music and art?
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that. Um, I mean, I think, the residents are storytellers. There's no question about that.
Sure. Yep.
Um, but I think lyrically, in a lot of ways, they felt that the story in and of itself, and Act One, Act Two, Act Three, the main plot points of it were so strong, there was no reason to do anything lyrically other than complement what was already there.
Mm.
Uh, whereas in the past, lyrically, they've kind of depended lyrically uh, to tell the stories, whereas this didn't feel like it needed that.
Another thing that I didn't realize until seeing the James Vance interview footage, which is just it's unbelievable to me that the doctors like did that to his face, like that weird patch on the front on his forehead, and it's almost like a Muppet character or something. But
Yeah,
when I saw this cover, I was like, "What is going on?" But then I saw the interview footage.
yeah,
But I also happen to notice you've got some AI art going on. I know that you do the art for the Residents albums. I've seen you exploring AI, and I know in the 80s and 90s you used I think we talked about this, the video toaster, the Amiga, a lot of Photoshop effects. Tell us about your foray into AI generated art. And I know that we also talked about NFTs a while back. There was kind of a
right.
backlash to that, but I haven't heard any backlash to the AI art. So I'd love to hear, as an artist and as the creative director for the Residents, your thoughts on all that.
Well, that AI, particularly AI artwork, is a pretty controversial subject these days, and there have certainly been, there is a short video. It's a 3-minute video that that I created to promote Dr. Dark, and it's all AI. Um, it's a character with the head of a cherry, speaking to me in various guises, sort of one president after another, and um, and it's been interesting seeing the reactions to that because most people are are positive towards it, but there are definitely people who would, oh, AI, oh, no, 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 no. And if, from my point of view, it's just a tool,
Yep.
and yeah, there are a lot of people cranking out shit with AI, no question about it. And it's very easy to crank out very professional looking, at times compelling images. But it's all about context. And what's the context that you put that into, and how does it work to tell your story? And when I started doing Photoshop back in the 90s. It's like, there are people that are going, oh, no, 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 you have to have a camera and just take the picture, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, this is bullshit. I mean, once again, it's all about context and how well your imagery works within the context that you've created for it.
The residents have always been so outside the box. Uh, and I think that's what's so shocking about a lot of the residents' material. Uh, but AI is kind of a tool that only works inside the box. It takes everyone else's inputs. Some people would say it steals their inputs, but puts it inside of this database, and it generates something that is generally not unexpected. Have you found that to be true in your exploration of it? Has it surprised you? Has it inspired you to do new and different things? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it has. It has totally surprised me at times. One of the first things that I started doing when I started playing around with it, I wish I had something. I'm going to run and grab something. Let
Yeah,
me find
sure,
a way.
sure.
Uh, so one of the first things that I did was I started taking residents' promo photos and running them through AI just to see what the hell they would do with them. And this one right here, if you can see it,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Oh,
it, it
it's the third Reich and roll photo, but new
well,
characters.
yeah, it's the one. It's promoting. I guess it was promoting Third Reich and roll, and it's like, and so the original is asbestos suits. You've got four people in asbestos suits. We went into a grocery store, a Safeway, and in those suits, amazingly, they let us stay in there long enough to uh, shoot a few photos. Um, but when I crank that through AI, this is what it spit out, and it's like, I love that. Uh,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, and there was an AI program. I can't remember the name of it now. The first one that I started experimenting with, and it's the one that spit that out. I have probably half a dozen different programs or apps that I've used, more recently. Um, but a lot of it has to do with, you have to come up with a prompt, and honestly, I find that 90 to 95, maybe 98% of what it spits out is crap. I throw it away,
Hmm.
you know. And then the stuff that comes out that I do like, I usually take it into Photoshop and screw around with it some more. I mean, that image right there, that just came out, and that was one of probably half a dozen that I was really impressed with. Uh, so I'm kind of curious to go back to that program, and maybe play around with it some more just to see what it does. But I don't know. Like I say, I find it. I mean, the stuff that you showed, the Dr. Dark pictures, you know, I put in a lot of time to, that was the characters as a pretty close representation of how I saw them. And I was pleased to be able to get that, because I wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. Not something that I felt was, I could have done something, but not something that was that representative of my imagination of what the character should have been.
I kind of miss the old generative AI days where it wasn't as good or refined.
Yeah,
It would give you things that were wrong, and
right.
they were only wrong from a business user standpoint, not from an artist
I,
standpoint.
yeah, I mean, with a lot of the early stuff that I have, the hands will be all weird, and sometimes the arms will be coming out of weird places, and it's like I'm going, whoa, wow, this is great. And yeah, it has gotten slicker in a way, that I can't say I'm that crazy about. But on the other hand, once again, it's a tool. I just have to just a matter of figuring out how to make it work for your purpose.
It's funny, the some of the old art that I generated just to try these things out reminded me so much of the Hello Dolly, or I'm sorry, the Hello Skinny. Um, with I don't even know what you call them. These sort of abstract photo cutout mixed
Right.
media type things where you'd have two or three faces and different things for eyeballs. It really reminded me of that because I think that's part of what makes Hello Skinny so terrifying. you know, it's this kind of like perverse vision of the world, and the old AI stuff was doing that for sure. But to get back to Dr. Dark, this cover I think is a great cover, and it represents just the strangeness of seeing a guy with his face that way giving an interview. I'll have to splice in some footage of him talking.
Yeah, yeah, you should.
I stood there staring. I'd have a couple friends over and turn up the music a little bit, and then I'd have to argue with them. And I knew down in this house about 5 times of arguments over music. I mean, it wasn't over drugs, it wasn't over alcohol, it was over the music.
Tell me about like these other characters, Lucy
Well,
Stuckstool and Jello
well,
Jackson.
or you may not know, not many people are aware that Dr. Kevorkian was a painter.
No, I
Um,
didn't know that.
and he's, you know, do Dr. Kevorkian, Google search Dr. Kevorkian painting images. And he was a pretty good painter. And so I discovered that in my research. And so it's like, well, I mean, Dr. Dark's got to be a painter. And so so ultimately, I mean, I have uh, something else I can show you here.
His art is really creepy.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. This is stuff you or your wife would produce. This is really strange.
It, it, once again, it adds a level of depth to his character that I had never really considered before. Uh, but anyway, I decided that Dr. Dark had to be a painter. So
Oh my
so
goodness.
I started creating these things, and um, they're partially AI. Um, there are also a lot of iOS, like iPads and iPhones. There, there's a whole world of software that has been created for that that system. And so what I would do would be to create these things first, sort of as AI things, partly with prompts, partly with photo prompts, and then I would take them into these iOS apps, and then treat them further. And that's what got. I mean, this has a great feeling of painting strokes, and that's where I got that.
How many of these did you make?
I've only made well, there are about a dozen, maybe 15 of them altogether. I've only taken had two of them that I've had printed out that size. I was kind of wanting to do a gallery or museum installation, just partly for the hell of it, partly to promote the album when it came out. but ultimately, it just looked like it was going to take more time and energy than I felt like it was going to be worth. And so I created two of them. And at some point, if that an opportunity kind of came along that seemed like it was worth it, well, I would make more of them because I have the imagery. But yeah, I have good contacts at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and they were interested, but they book everything like years in advance.
Hmm.
Whatever. I would like to make more of these at some point though, because I think they're nice pieces.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you have any of the LPs, the Psychophone releases, or the Cherry Red releases nearby that you could show?
Um, I have tons of them.
I mean, of Doctor Dark.
Oh, no, no, nothing yet of Dr. Dark. Well, let me see the Cherry Red. I have here is the Cherry Red vinyl. You know, I haven't opened this yet. I could open it
It's up
if
to
you think.
you. I
Uh,
didn't know if there was a special vinyl or anything like that.
well, it's not colored vinyl or anything. I don't think. Uh, I know that Psychophon, um, Andreas is really doing some great stuff.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I've seen photos of it, but I haven't gotten any of it yet. Uh, so here's
Oh
this
nice.
this is Dr. Dark. Uh, this is so it's two records. This is the stuff, and then here's all of Dr. Dark's paintings. Uh, yeah, it's just black vinyl on the inside. I mean, there's a yeah, that's
Oh,
kind of
those
a
are cool.
nice label. Uh, and yeah, just more of the same. Uh,
Yeah,
but
but it's nice to have the full-sized images. On the
yeah,
CD
it
you
is.
get this little triptych, which is nice,
Right.
but getting
Yeah.
the full-sized art on the record sleeve, that's great.
And it has this nice kind of booklet in there too that has all the lyrics.
Hmm.
Uh, it explains what's happening scene by scene. It's a nice package.